Hi, my name is Jenny Devonshire and welcome to the Pause2Perform podcast, where we talk about all things relating to wellness, what you should take a pause for in your day to optimise your mental and physical health and perform at your peak. So this week I'm very pleased to be joined by Nicky Leach. So Nicky is the founder and CEO of the Spiral Hub, where she works with business leaders and leadership teams to successfully drive and implement change and grow their business. So Nicky, welcome. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I thought we'd just start off today if you could tell the listeners a little bit about you and what it is that you do at the Spiral Hub.
I am a change management expert. I started on my journey when I worked for a company called PwC, and I was with them for 13 years. And I was a management consultant. I would go into businesses and help them to implement change. And one of my kind of real learnings from that, as well as developing a lot of skills and experience across different sectors, was realizing that short-term interventions from consultants and external support doesn't very often lead to change being sustained, because we were doing it to people in the business. So after 13 years, I left and I joined the NHS, where I had responsibility for implementing change within the business. And this was great because I got to be the leader. I got to, rather than being the advisor, I was the person leading the change. And that was where I realised the importance as a leader of the ability to give people the direction that they need to go in where you want to take the business, but then enabling people around you to be able to implement change for themselves. And so I kind of got that chance to put all of that experience into practice, and it worked really effectively. And I left there in 2020. And I've spent the last couple of years then looking at how do I support businesses to be able to implement change in the way that I did. And particularly because of my passion for sustainability and climate change. You know, we've now are on the largest change program that the world has ever seen. And so for me, it's about helping business leaders and leadership teams to empower their people to implement change, with a real driver being sustainability.
Oh, excellent. So from that, I kind of get that sort of autonomy and people taking control of change seems to be one of the most important features. Is that right?
It absolutely is. Yeah. So, and that's actually how I would define change management. So if you look at, in Wikipedia, or if you look in lots of different sort of definitions for change management, it gets quite technical. And actually, if you keep it really simple, change management is about enabling people to change themselves and moving from A to B and empowering people to do that, because you can't change other people. You can only actually ever change yourself. But as a leader and in businesses, it's about how do you equip people with the skills, the tools, the knowledge, and the clarity on what it is you want to achieve. That then is what change management is all about. And how do you bring those things together?
Yeah, I suppose like change happens all the time out of our control, doesn't it? Like obviously you've got the seasons and just things will happen. And I guess like with what you're doing, it's about making changes that are your choice and you're taking control of change rather than just letting things kind of happen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the case in business, and for individuals. A really big thing that I talk about is personal responsibility leadership. So, taking that personal responsibility for your own change journey, your own journey through life. You know, change is a constant. As you say, the seasons exist. You know, we grow up, we age, that's a change process. You know, change is just always all around us. And there are some changes you can't control and there are some change that you can. And it's then focusing on those changes that you can control and your response to them.
So I would say that change is probably one of people's greatest fears. First of all, do you agree with that? And why do you think that is? Or do you know why that is?
Yeah, I mean, goodness, I'm human. I have fear. Yeah, I'm a change management expert and I have the fear of change as well. So yeah, goodness, it's absolutely real. And I think we fear change because we're stepping into the unknown. We don't know when a change is happening, or even when we want the change to happen for ourselves, we're actually going to be doing something we've not done before. And that's really scary. And actually, as uncomfortable as our current situation is, and as much as we might want change to happen and we don't like where we are right now, we're familiar with it. And taking that step into something else is really uncomfortable. I mean, our brains, I think, are designed to find peace in the knowing. When we don't know what's going to happen, we create all of these different scenarios and we create worry and we create fear. And that fear is often so much bigger than when we actually do something. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. So for a long time, because I'm really passionate about change and I know that we need to do change differently in business, I have wanted to spread the word. And one of the ways in which I could do that is to be a speaker. And I have avoided stepping my foot into becoming a speaker for over a year because the narrative I was telling myself was, I'm not going to be very good. What I've got to say isn't going to be very unique, that I'm not going to come across very well. And so all of those fears, all of that narrative I was telling myself was holding me back. But when I finally decided to go for it, and to be fair, I was definitely helped by my business coach who gave me the final kind of shove over the finishing line, I absolutely loved it. Was it perfect? No, it wasn't. Did I get feedback on things I could improve? Yes, I did. But actually, overwhelmingly, the session went really well. It added value to my audience. And so I achieved the goal that I had, which was about spreading the word. And so it was brilliant. I'm on that journey, but it took me a year of knowing that it's what I wanted to do to actually finally make it happen.
That's amazing. So good that you actually finally did it. And have you got more coming up now that you've kind of got through that fear?
Yes, no, I absolutely have. I've got 3 already planned for March, and I'm even being brave now, and I'm going to be putting it on my website and actually saying to businesses, hey, I'm here, happy to come and kind of, talk to you and your teams about change and how to make it successful. So yeah, I feel I've done it 2 or 3 times now, so I feel pretty confident.
Amazing, well done. Well, great start to the year. So what are some of the common mistakes that businesses make when they're kind of implementing change, or maybe individuals as well? Maybe you could share on both of them.
Yeah, I think so. The mistakes, in terms of what the mistakes that businesses make, I think there's 3 things. I'll start there and then the individual. I think businesses have a lack of clarity about what they're trying to achieve. And it has to start. And actually for an individual, so for us as individuals or as a business, why do you want to change? And be getting really clear on that why, because actually that will, when the going gets tough, which it always does when change happens, coming back to and holding true to that, this is why I'm going on this journey, will kind of stand you in good stead. But very often businesses don't do that. They don't have that clarity around what is it they're trying to achieve, and they then don't actually communicate it to people. Secondly, I think these are probably as relevant to individuals as businesses. We really underestimate how long something's going to take to implement and how long change takes. So whether we're, as individuals and then individuals in a business, we really love starting things. Actually, it's new and shiny and exciting. But following it all the way through, it's a bit like the New Year's resolutions. It's January. Let's talk about those. New Year's resolutions, where we think, we're going to start something, and everyone gets excited, and gyms are packed, and everyone's out in the park. It's the recognizing it takes time. So actually, what are those mechanisms that you're going to put in place to hold you to account yourself for the changes that you're going to make, and what's that process within a business that you're going to put in place to maintain momentum and make sure that the change is actually happening and delivering the results that you want and not being left to fizzle out. And then third, I think for businesses, often they see changing the business as something separate to running the business, and it's you can't really do that, because actually if you just focus on changing the business, then running the business, today's performance is very likely to kind of drop off a cliff and you'll really struggle today. But equally, if you only ever focus on today and don't put any energy into change, then it's not going to happen. So it's how do you integrate the two and spend time and energy on both, and recognize that it's not always talking about everything all at the same time, but making time in your, I would say, quarterly business rhythm to be talking about change, as well as talking about the running of the business and how that's going and performance against targets and things.
Yeah, I think like on the individual level, from what I know, is a major problem as well, or major mistake people make is to try and change everything at once. And it's like you're just setting yourself up for failure. So they're like, and also trying to do too much. So it's like, I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week. I'm not going to eat any sugar. And just really setting themselves up for failure, because you're starting at these massive goals or massive ideas of what you can change, whereas actually if you did one element of one thing at a time, it will take a long time, but you'll actually be successful, rather than comes around to next new year and you're making exactly the same resolutions as you did last year. And one other question I want to ask you is like, do you ever find businesses in particular, they make change, or they try to make change because they feel like they should, rather than actually wanting to implement that change or realizing that they need to for a reason that they own, rather than just sort of paying lip service, I guess?
Yeah, I think so. I think certainly if take my passion, sustainability, I think at the moment there is a lot of greenwashing and businesses paying lip service to the sustainability agenda. Oh yes, we must be doing things, sometimes they're doing things like planting trees, which, okay, they're doing something, but actually that's not getting to the root cause of the problem, which is their manufacturing process, for example, is not sustainable, and that actually they need to change how their products are manufactured if they actually want to make a difference. So I think, yes, there's definitely that challenge. I also think sometimes, back to that sort of shiny, new things being all lovely, exciting and shiny, I think often leaders can see that they want something to be different and that there needs to be change in the business. But again, it's the same as with the individual. It's the staying power and the sticking power to see it all the way through. Because as a leader, if it's not important to you, then it's just not going to be important to people in your business. There's a great phrase, what interests my boss fascinates me. If a leader is not prepared to stick at it and really make sure that, yes, it's important, yes, I'm going to see it, make sure it's seen through all the way to the end. If they're not doing that, then people in the business aren't going to either, and therefore it won't happen.
So on that note, so if someone like the business leader, it's something that you think is important, but they're not interested in, or they don't see the importance of it, how can you change their opinion so that it becomes important? Or is that not possible? It has to, you just have to wait for them to sort of come around to it.
I've realised that where I focus my passion and energies are with people that have realised, that are taking that personal responsibility, that do recognise the importance of they need to make change themselves, and that they have a role to play in making sure it then follows through all the way into the business. It's okay to sometimes have the wobbles, and it's okay to not have all the answers. In fact, none of us have all the answers. But if a leader in the business isn't 100% on board with the change that I'm working on with them, then for me, that's a red line, and I don't work with those businesses because it's that important. I'm on this planet to help businesses to successfully implement change, and the leader is so pivotal in that if the leader isn't on board, then I won't work with the business, or I'll step away if I can see a few months in that they're not where they need to be. And it's okay if they're not on the they're not ready yet, but then that for me is a red line.
Yeah, it's good to know. So there's no point if they're not engaged, they're not, you're not just wasting your time and wasting their time, aren't you? So staying with this sustainability, because obviously it's very important to you. First, why is it important? I think we probably know, but you can give us a little bit more insight. And also, what are maybe the low hanging fruit of things that people can do that are quite easy to change on their journey to becoming more sustainable?
So the reason sustainability is really important to me is because we only have one planet, and I was starting to work with businesses around change for growing their business. And then I thought, but if the change if the growth that you're looking for is not good for our planet, then I'm not sure I can buy into that growth and that change, because it doesn't matter how much money we've got, how many possessions we've got, homes and holidays, none of that will exist in the future if we don't have a really healthy, habitable planet to live on. And we have a responsibility for future generations to make sure that we're looking after the planet, and not just future generations, but for all the animals that live on this planet with us. We have a responsibility to look after them. And so that just doesn't, it's first and foremost. Without it, nothing else exists. In terms of what can people do, I think there's so many different things. And one of the things that I have really tried to advocate for is that if every person and every business and every government does something, then actually we'll start turning the dial. So, and there's a brilliant, if people are kind of looking for what the things I can do as an individual, I mean, the thing that really inspired me was the David Attenborough documentary, which he did in 2020. And he talks about the 5 things that people can do. Now, on the back of that, I became a vegetarian. And that's the thing I've chosen to do. But, none of us are perfect. I still have plastic bottles that I use for my shampoo and conditioner. So, but I know some people that have gone to, shampoo bars, for example. So I think whether you're an individual, whether you're a business, governments, everyone has to do something. And I think it's just start somewhere. And the easiest thing to start with is the one thing that maybe isn't so far away from what you do today. And it's back to that, trying to do all things all at once. Just start with one thing and then build from there, and doing more things from there. So I moved back to London a couple of years ago, and so now public transport's so much easier. I hardly ever get in my car anymore. To be honest, I'm probably going to sell my car this year, because actually I don't need it. Now, when I was living in a different part of the country, I absolutely did. So that would have been a big change for me. But now it's a smaller change because the public transport is better. So I think it's looking at all of the impacts that we have and all the negative impacts, and think, where can I start making that difference?
Yeah, I watched that David Attenborough documentary the other day. I think it was the one about the melting ice caps, and it was just so awful. Really, it's a real wake-up call. And I do think it's very easy for people to say, me doing this isn't going to make any difference, so there's no point. But then when it adds up, if everyone that does these small changes, that's a big change, isn't it? So it's like you say, coming back to your personal responsibility. What can you do? Don't worry about what everyone else is doing, but do your bit, and then hopefully over time it will amount to something. I think we spoke before actually about things like paper in the office. I mean, I can imagine that must be a massive thing that makes quite a lot of waste, doesn't it?
It does. And actually, so I suppose for a business, a quick win, absolutely. Now that technology is such that so much of what we have can be automated as a process. You know, I work with some businesses at the moment who, are still very manual. And I know it's a challenge for smaller businesses to make that investment into technology now to become a technology enabled business, but actually it's much more efficient. It's then, I think, as well, looking at where to invest where there's a win-win. There's a lot of opportunities if you do make that initial investment to then save money down the line, because you don't need printers and you don't need storage facilities for all this paper, and you don't need to be buying paper anymore, just by going to, handheld devices. So, I work with a company at the moment who install fire and security systems. It's a very manual process with a lot of paper. If they went to handheld devices, the guys out in the field who are installing all of these systems could just, look at what all the requirements and tick a few buttons, and then it's all the information that's needed for invoicing is all, gone back to the office and HQ straight away. Whereas at the moment, that paper might have, eventually makes its way back to the office, and eventually then the my customer, bills their customers. So there's a real, real win actually from using less paper. Actually makes you a more efficient business, which therefore saves you money. So there are lots of opportunities there.
Yeah, and money. And paper costs money. So and printer, like the ink on printers as well, it's like extortionate. I recently finished an MSc, and when I started, I hated reading journal articles on the screen. I was just like, I can't do it. Like I would need to print them out. But then I realized how expensive printing was for one thing, and then I was also like, no, you don't want like paper everywhere. So then eventually, obviously it took a bit of time and learning how to use the highlighter and things like that. But, you do adapt, don't you? And I think now I'm like, I can read journals on there, and I actually think I prefer it. So you can persevere and get there, can't you?
You can, you're absolutely right. That was something I found a real challenge when I was doing my master's. And the thing that helped me on that was starting to read books on my Kindle. And then once I got used to reading the books on a Kindle, which isn't that much of a difference between a paper copy, I don't think, then and then I was able to transition from reading things on a Kindle to reading things on a laptop screen.
God, I've
just those little
yeah, my Kindle, I absolutely love it, and I've been using it for years. Now I actually always I don't want a book, because holding it and things like, when you're on holiday, if you're just lying on a sun lounger, you can just leave your Kindle, you can just lie it down, and it's just so much easier. I was like, so actually, you can see why that's so much better. But I still found it different. I was on the Kindle and I found that fine, but for some reason, I think because journal articles are quite heavy going, I found them really a bit more of a challenge. I did get used to it. So so I just wanted to actually touch on culture, actually, because I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day, and it was talking about wellness interventions, and I did agree with the post. And it was saying, it's all very well offering yoga and things like that, but if you've got a toxic culture, or when people are they don't feel psychologically safe in the workplace, then nothing's going to really help until you resolve that. So what I wanted to know is obviously culture is very important. It seems to be talked about a lot more online and in the press. So how hard is it for a company to change its culture, and how can it be done the best way possible?
Yeah, so you just touched on a nerve in terms of what's actually really important for change, and it is a culture based on psychological safety. If there isn't psychological safety in the organisation, and psychological safety is that people feel able to speak up, ask questions, make suggestions in the way in which different things could be done differently, all without having fear of being punished or marginalised in some way, that is just critical for change. Because you need people who are going to be comfortable to say if they don't understand something, to say if they don't agree with something, to be able to put suggestions forward. And the problem is, that doesn't automatically happen. And the problem with culture, I think, is that culture, if you don't just intentionally design culture, then it will just grow, and it'll be based on the personalities of the people in the business, and certainly the people in the business from the outset. And it can just creep up on you, and all of a sudden one day you realise that people don't feel supported, that if they open their mouth and make a suggestion, then they're closed down really quickly. And so because often the culture develops without being planned, you don't realise what the culture is today. And so I think for businesses who maybe have a sense that they don't have a particularly healthy culture, it's to start by doing a kind of a culture diagnostic and assessment and understanding what is the culture that we have today. And then the tool then that's really helpful for starting to articulate the culture that they want tomorrow is to actually start from the place of values. And what are the values that are important to us within a business, but to go beyond just the words, because fun or courageous or innovation, any of these words mean different things to different people. So the important thing then is to think about what are the values of our business, what is our definition of that word, and then what does that mean in terms of how we want people in the business to behave, what are good behaviours and what are unacceptable behaviours, and to really clearly set that out. And then what are the activities that are performed by the business that make sure that those values are living and breathing. And certainly in established businesses, bringing people together to agree those values and what they mean for the business and what are acceptable behaviours will mean that they become living and breathing in the organisation, because everyone is owning them, rather than it being like a desktop exercise or a few people in a darkened room going away and writing down, a few words and some definitions and then coming out to the business. In fact, I just had a client who recently did this. And they thought they were being really well intentioned, by going away, doing this work, coming back out to the business and going, here you go, here are our values. And everyone in the business just went, no, these don't make us feel motivated. They don't inspire us. So actually it's much better to go out into the business and spend time, in focus groups and one-to-ones, getting to grips with the culture as it is today, and then start defining it together in terms of what you want it to be in the future. And it is hard. Culture change is hard because there will be some behaviours that will not align to the new values and the new behaviours that you're looking for. And so people will have to be comfortable calling each other out on those. But if you're coming from a place where your starting point is a toxic behaviour, it's going to be very, very scary to step into saying to someone, what you've just done doesn't align to our values, and doing things differently. And that's really scary. So yeah, culture change is hard because it involves, yes, calling people out on poor behaviour, the wrong behaviours. And again, as well, it takes time. It takes time to build a new culture, and you've kind of got to stick with it and get everyone on board. And some people it's inevitable that there will be some people that are on your bus that will not ever align to those values. And then sometimes, there will be some tough conversations that you have to have about whether they're the right person on the bus anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's really difficult, isn't it? It actually reminds me, because when I was doing for my MSc, we all had to do presentations at the end, and one of the people had done something about culture, and I think it's to do with doping culture actually within sport, or whatever, with the sport she was in, endurance running, I think it was. And I remember one of the lecturers getting, because she was saying it needs to be top down, and one of the lecturers was kind of saying, questioning this, saying, well, that's saying that the people bottom up, you're saying that the people there don't have any autonomy to implement change. And what you're sort of saying is that you need both, don't you? Top down and bottom up, so everyone's on the same page for it to be successful. And that makes total sense.
Yeah. It's the culture change. It's the same as we were talking about change management, in this context, you're changing the culture. Change management applies to any type of change, whether it's a new product or a new service. Involving people throughout the journey is what will make the change successful. So it is about involvement, empowering, engaging, all of those buzzwords, because people can only change themselves. You can't change another person. So that's that culture change. Absolutely involve people right from the outset and all the way through the journey of implementing culture change.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I've got one final question that I'm going to ask all my guests. So this is, you can answer this for individuals or businesses, or both if you like. So what's one thing that you recommend people or businesses take a pause for to improve their mental and physical health and optimize their performance?
So I am going to answer this for individuals, but it equally applies, I think, to companies, because it is individuals that run businesses. At the end of the day, we are just a collection of individuals in a business making business happen. It's about pausing and looking at yourself, and are you always being the best version of yourself? And I think 3 tips for doing that. I think it's really important to look after yourself, and that starts with eating healthily, exercising regularly, and getting good quality sleep. And I think if we all start doing those 3 things, then we are creating in ourselves the right environment for us to present into the world in a healthy way.
I think that's excellent advice, and I 100% agree with that. Because you can't do anything, like when you're not looking after yourself, you're not feeling your best, you're not able to give other people your best, or just show up as you want to. So that's great advice. So I just want to know, let all the listeners know, where can they find you? So if you've got your social media or anything like that, and also how can they work with you if they want to implement some change that lasts?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. That's definitely the best social media platform. That's where you'll find me at the moment. So Nicky, just do on the search, Nicky Leach. My website is thespiralhub.com. And if you want to work with me, then drop me a DM into LinkedIn or an email at nicky@thespiralhub.com. And I'd be delighted to speak to them.
Excellent. Well, I will link all of those below so people can find it nice and easily. But thank you so much, Nicky, for your time. It's been great chatting to you. And next time I want to implement some change, I'm going to use your techniques. And yes, have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Pause to Perform podcast with me, Jenny Devonshire. If you enjoyed this show, I'd really appreciate it if you could rate, review and subscribe. This helps other people find it, and hopefully I can help more people to improve their mental and physical health and optimise their performance.